Hi students, I wanted to make another video about this shifted still life because I really think that out of all of it, it's the most challenging to explain because it's all about subtle elements, subtle techniques, subtle effects of watercolor that just don't happen in any other medium. And it's a great opportunity to do a really nice underpainting. Many times we do techniques underneath that create a layer that once dry can be built upon. That's why we have to do it really carefully so we don't leave a lot of paint everywhere. We want to make sure there's a lot of white. So you want to have a paper towel ready to preserve some lights if need be with blotting. And remember, blotting is not boom, 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 boom. That ruins the paper. It doesn't do anything. Blotting is taking a paper towel, really good paper towel, even a towel, as long as it's soft, and putting it into a really thick, smushy, hard shape. Smush it into a hard shape. And then you press with all your might for like 3-4 seconds and then lift. Press and lift. It's very conscious, it's very deliberate, and you want to do it once and then scan your eye around and do it again. And this is something that I didn't like how it turned out before. I'm going to use the old one under here. You'll recognize it. When I was trying to demo before and I put that onion on the table and the pill bottle and the tomatoes, and I had this result, which to me it's a little bit lackluster. Plus I was demonstrating glazing on top, so it got a little funky. However, in this project, in order to do step 2, you literally have to wait overnight. So the other one's ready to go for step 2, and I kind of demoed it a little bit on another paper to show you the drip down technique. Basically on tons of our projects, we carefully fill the negative space by coming right to the edge of something and never leaving a halo. It's a good hard edge practice. It's when you come to the edge, pull away, come to the edge, pull away, whether it's dry brush or hard edge up to even wash. The idea is when you fill negative space, you go to the absolute edge of something. If you don't, and you make it all bubbly and weird and cloddy or a halo, it doesn't do the trick of pushing back the negative space. So anyway, I kind of started showing you that, and what we do usually is cool in the back, warm in the front. So we'll be using this on the earth tones. It's used a lot in the splatter one we're going to do. It's all about temperature, clear, crisp, negative space in the back, right to the horizon line. I'm going to put a horizon line. There's actually kind of one right there I can use. But you always want to only fill to the horizon line. If you go past the horizon line again, it's blobby and floating, and it doesn't make any sense visually. So just that process you can use on a lot of different paintings on top of your underpainting. So every time I do a demo on one painting, I'm actually demoing a lot on other ones too. So if you mess up, like I feel like I did on that, just do it again. I am going to use this bottom one to continue the demo, just so I can show you step 1 and 2 in the same video. Just remember, when you're done with this one, the first part, you got to set it aside and completely let it go, except for checking on it periodically with this. If you put it in the sun, it might get dirty though. If it's on a table in the sun, it'll dry faster, but if there's a giant puddle, we're going to utilize this, and if the design calls for another level of manipulation, that's another way of doing this. Okay, basically an underpainting is a design all in of itself. It should stand on its own, even if you did nothing to it on top. It should be balanced. All those design principles from Art 22 or Art 23 that you learn, composition, and even setting up a still life, repetition, unity with variety, overlapping, off the edge, variety of heights, variety of textures, values, not variety of color generally. Very, very, very strategic use of that. This kind of dabbles in that. Every time you set something up, you're dealing with color theory. When we set up our palette, we're dealing with it. But this project is great because you get to have this beautiful underpainting that's a design and allow it to have back runs. It's all wet and wet. So what happens is the pigment will separate overnight and give you these beautiful effects. And if you are able to do a little bit of blotting here and there, you can manipulate the design, creating eye movement throughout. So anyway, when you set up your palette, try to pick a subject that's not too all over the place. You don't want a rainbow of stuff. Just a few items around the house is what I did. You know, if the blue you have doesn't quite match the blue, this is cobalt. I only have ultramarine. I still will use ultramarine. This onion could use a dot of magenta. I won't, which is good anyway, because it's more of a red-violet naturally. But I'm just saying, you may have elements in your subject that don't match the color. That's not a good moment right there. There's an awkward moment. Awkward moments are when things hit the edge or each other in a weird way. And you can kind of scan for those. So I might adjust that, bring this up a little. I just did a rushed image, but it's the same thing. The other thing is you want a horizon line. I'm going to put mine here. So in the end I can turn it, and this will be the horizon line, and that'll be the negative space. That'll allow me to create depth, and it'll allow me to leave a lot of white. Because your underpainting should be the primary player here. So once that's done and dried overnight, you're going to strategically save the most beautiful parts and strategically shove back subtly the ones that are not. I won't know how beautiful this is until tomorrow. But while this dries, I'm going to do step 2 here, because it doesn't really make sense sometimes when they're all split up. And I also threw in there some gesture drawing techniques. The flower drawing I did really illustrates that, because you can draw, gesture, different colors, different markers, and then that carbon paper on the back. So you can draw this on paper just like I did that flower, and then transfer it onto your underpainting tomorrow. Or if you're really comfortable with your drawing skills, you can do a light 2H, 4H drawing on top of your dry underpainting tomorrow. Alright, so I'm going to put this, I'll do it up here so you can see. Put it in here. Gives you the gist. Okay, so you want to take the biggest brush you can find that you have. If you don't have a big brush, you can use your hand and scoop up water with your hand. You can find a house paint brush in the garage. You can use anything really. This is just an old hardware brush, and actually a little bigger might even be better, but this works. So you want to get to your water and do it all over. Now ideally you would just put this in the sink at your house, like soak it in the sink. In a classroom setting we would soak it in the sink, and oftentimes clothespin it up to drip down. But this works too, as long as you get it all over. If you feel like you're not getting enough water, just dip in here and throw it on there. Now it's okay if you have some areas of dry paper, but you want it to be drenched, and you'll know because it's very shiny. Now we want to take a big brush, and as I did before, very loosely block in the general placement of these things with a mass gesture. Now this red onion is over in this area. I don't want, just more water, I don't want to paint this so that it has an edge. No edges. We want no edges. This is for backgrounds. So I'm going to use this big brush, and I'm going to get quite a bit of paint. It's one of the few times that you can get a lot of paint on your brush and not have to worry about being too saturated. It's because you have already wet the paper. So I'm going to do a quick general placement of this thing. Looks like it needs a little black or brown. So you're kind of doing local color, but it should be so fast that you don't overdo it. Like there's a darker area there. Boom, boom. That's it. I'm done with that whole shape. If you do too much, oops, that's too dry. If you get a dry edge, water. You don't want it to dry on an edge. You can always put more water. It's okay if I don't have details. It's okay if it's just a quick blob. That's the goal. And we don't want to overwork the paper either. I can switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to get this orange, this little heirloom tomato thing, and I'm going to block that where it goes. It's a little bit yellow. I'm going to knock the color out a little bit of red, and just kind of like there's where that is. If it gets all over, it doesn't matter. This thing is only inspiration. That's all it is. And then this, it goes here. You can see that orange there. And then there's one other one there. Boom. And this paper I'm going to end here, so because it's the same size as the other one that I have underneath. Boom. Boom. But you can see I still have a bold, bright type of a color, even though I'm not completely shaping it in any way. You can see it's really loose. Down here I have a red tomato. I don't know if you see it. It's on top of this little swirl that's on top of the... See how it got an edge? It just got an edge. That tells me, boom, more water, more water. Even if my brush is a little dirty there, it's all right. Okay, I'm going to use a big brush instead because this... I'll use a medium brush. Over here, there's a flashlight over here. You can see it over here. It's kind of on an angle because I took the picture from above. But before I paint it, I have more water. Because I keep thinking, oh my gosh, I'm getting a hard edge. I don't want that. So it's kind of circle, circle, boom. Literally, that's it. The only more information is maybe the inside of it, a little black. And then I stop, and I look, and I wait. And I see where else can I put this. See the hard edge? That's bad. When that happens, wet that whole area. And again, if you can get a place in your house to put the entire paper in the sink first, that's better. That's what we do in the classroom. We cover the whole thing with water, block it in, and set it on the side overnight. Now this is a very, very pale yellow, so I'm going to dilute it just a little. And it's not a very bright one. But again, I'm going to put more water. Might be easier if you guys just stick it in the sink, or actually if you have a hose or a spigot outside, because it's drying so fast, it's defeating the point here. Over here I have this kind of a pale yellow, and to make it more pale I added some green because it looks so bright when it's like that. The orange is bright, but this is not. So see, I got an edge. Again, I'm beginning to think it's kind of dry today, so it's drying really fast. Don't be tempted to render yet at this point. Now I could go in and fill the entire background gray. That would not be wise, because that would mean I lose all this beautiful white. And at this point, if it starts creating hard edges that you didn't plan, again, a little more water or a little bit of just letting it go, because it was just, there's better. So this, I feel, is going to be better tomorrow than the other one. I'm going to put a tiny bit more pigment here for that cross contour, just a little. Boom, done. And then of course more water because it's looking weird. Now, while this is sitting around and you're working on starting to sketch it on regular sketch paper to start practicing the drawing, you can do certain things. You can do it relating to that, or you can do it just as a design. And again, remember, squish it up, hard shape, push it down. And you have this beautiful paper towel blot texture. See how this is moving in? That beautiful process. It is spreading into where I blotted. And it's going to start creating these backgrounds that we call cauliflowers. And they're just gorgeous. This is now becoming interesting. This puddle is so severe that something you can do, either pick it up and let it drip off the side, because we use gravity a lot in watercolor. I would probably do something like this when I pick it up. Rather than blot it, let it pour off the edge. In fact, I'm going to pour it into the water bottle. Now this changes the design, but now I've gotten rid of that puddle without really creating a big cave in the paper. And now, since this looks isolated, I might want to do another blot. Oh, that's pretty. And then really take your time and nuance it. You don't have to refer to the picture. You might want to a little bit, but it doesn't matter because we're not going to be using that picture in relation to our top layer, other than it's like a distant ethereal image that is reminiscent of that subject. But see how much white I've left? See how I have some blotting? Now this is something that I think would work better overnight than what I have at this point. And let it drip. It doesn't matter if you lose the general sense. See, look how cool that is. Now this is wild and cool as opposed to that, which was cool. I could even turn it, because when we draw on it, we're gonna decide design-wise which area we want to draw on related to the, you don't have to draw your picture in the same position on the paper that you painted it. Okay, so this is gonna be way better, except I have to leave it somewhere. So I wanted to do that just so you could see, and we can take a look at, I'll take a picture of it and post it later so that you can see how cool. You can zoom in on all the effects that happen. And periodically I might want to go over there and do a blot. So you want to kind of keep it nearby. I think mine's looking pretty good. I'm just going to leave it alone. Okay, so this is my horrible other one, plus my attempt at demonstrating glazing at the same time, which kind of messes up the whole idea of the project. But I wanted to show you that whole negative space and drip down. So assuming I've already drawn this a million times, and I have my, see if I can see this from here. I got one of those camera things for my head, and my whole neck, I mean, it was like my whole, I almost fell over. It was so heavy and horrible. It just killed my neck. I don't know how those people go skiing with those things on their heads. Anyway, I'm just doing a quick thing. I'm going to move this out a little because I said it was, actually I'll put it in front a little, it's probably better. I don't know, we'll figure it out. Alright, so this is the flashlight. I'm ending this a little bit sooner so it matches the scale. Boom, 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 and then there's this ellipse of this thing. Always draw your ellipses like a slinky. Around. Get them accurate. Now we may or may not put details on these objects. A lot of times it looks so good without it that we don't even bother, that we end up just using the negative space to create the space and then just leave it. I'm just going to outline these a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And again, if you do this verse on a paper, it's going to be less messy than what I'm doing. And then just transfer it with the thing. Or just use a lighter pencil. And I want you to be able to see. And I feel like this thing is kind of high up. I want to show you that technique that is so common in all of our projects of the negative space being cool and the foreground being a drip down. The beauty of drip down is it doesn't cover the white, and you don't want the white. The thing about the drip down is you have to tape it to the wall. So this will be a little tricky to show, but at the very end I'll take it off the camera thing, and then I will put it on the wall and turn it so you can see. Because I'm also going to change the horizon line. The horizon line, it doesn't exist on mine because I did it on paper, but there's a line as kind of an idea. And remember, with your horizon line, always draw through or use a straight edge, because what happens is people always have a line here and then the next one's over there, or it goes like that. So you got to always keep consistent with your horizon line. This looks kind of cool. You know, actually this isn't so bad now that I look at it, because the goal is we want to save the parts that are gorgeous and soften the parts that are boring. This is gorgeous. I don't know if you can see it, but there's these beautiful veins that go down, and this little area where I blotted with a paper towel. This is beautiful, White is ideally used in watercolor as a fleck of foreground. Almost everybody thinks the white paper is the background or the table. It's not. The white can be beautiful things like this that jump forward, because white is the most brilliant, brightest thing you could ever have in a work on paper. The worst thing is to add white paint or white watercolor. I've said that before. It's just, don't ever. And if you're doing canvas, canvas is the brightest. So when you put white, unless you do multiple layers, you lose that. And in this medium, you always want to take advantage of this the most. I see this is wrong. This is much better. This is one of the trickier elements because it was foreshortened is what we call it. But it doesn't matter because I'm not going to have that part there anyway. All this stuff won't be there. And you don't want to do that unless you have a really good eraser. But I just want to show you the technique because I don't have a good drawing of it. I'm going to put this in front though because that's what we call an awkward moment. It just looks weird. That's as much information as you want to have. That's it. General placement and negative space. Now, if you've already drawn this elsewhere, it's going to look way better than this. If you had done this super light without the other process of the homemade carbon and all that, that's cool. But see how few details? This is just a loose gestural contour drawing. All right, so what we do in the negative space is take the biggest brush we have and use one of the colors that's already in there. You don't want to create a new cool color. Now this kind of mixes, so I could go purpley, but the blue is isolated. So this is another strategy. This blue lives all by itself, just sitting over there. Whenever you have one thing in a design, you're in trouble because it's stuck, unless it's featuring one big thing for the project. So I want to repeat. Repetition is the most important element of any art practice, really, whether it's music, fine art, film, you know. See how I'm filling it really even? It's not dark enough, so I'm going to put a little more blue. Oh, I started light because I don't want to go crazy here. And you can decide if you want wet and wet, like I just kind of did. You can also do this, which is dry brush. It's more dramatic. It all affects the mood. It's the kind of mood you want to convey based on this picture. I sort of just did a combination of wet and dry brush. Not dry brush, but like flared out texture, because it's too wet to be dry brush. But you could do dry brush, you could do even wash, you could do wet and wet. Whatever you do, it doesn't matter as long as you switch brushes and get right to the edge. You don't want to leave this halo. So if you can't get in there with that first brush, use a smaller one, because we don't want to lose this edge. The edge is what makes this work. Another thing you can do is go slightly darker at the edge. And you want to go literally to the edge of the pencil line. I'm gonna make it a little darker so you can see. If you're worried about timing, just wet it a little first, just dampen it like we did on the scales. But you can see how now the technique is starting to work because I'm disciplined enough to get to the edge and stop at the horizon line. That's the key. And then you take a bigger brush and flare it out. But you can see what's happening now is the onion is now starting to read as closer than the negative space. That's why the transfer should be very linear in the sense of you know where it ends. So I'm achieving a few things here. I changed the picture a little. I just want to show you the technique. And you know what I'm ignoring is the background. The biggest problem people have is they're consumed with the first layer. And they're trying to paint the first layer. And they're trying to match the drawing of the first layer. defeats the entire purpose. If you pay attention to these things, you've missed the point of the project. That doesn't exist. It's only this new drawing that you're featuring. Now, you can decide now what you want to paint and what you don't. Whenever you do one thing, it calls upon you to do something else. I'm going to paint this and leave this because this is gorgeous. This would be an example of a moment where you do nothing. Less is more in this medium. Now I've toned down the orange. See that even wash? A little bit of puddle, but I'm going to put a little orange in there because there is orange in there. And now I've balanced some of these warmer hues. I'm going to repeat that. Well, I don't want to repeat it here because look how cool that I don't want to mess that up. I can do it here. Every time you do something, it affects something else. And I can't do the drip down until that blue completely dries. It's the only way I can demonstrate it. So while that's happening, you don't want to do the drip down after you do that. You got to wait. I'm going to work on this flashlight, which is an opportunity also to repeat that blue. And at this point you can kind of slow down and draw a little more. You can draw with paint. Get an essence of that shape. I don't want to get too dark. And even though it's black in there, as you recall from how I blobbed it on that other one, I'm not making it black in there because it looks good white in there. Now, another thing you want to make sure of is that when you draw it, you don't draw it in the same place. If you try to draw it in the same scale that you blobbed it in the mass gesture, it won't work. This was my flashlight in the original. This is where I drew it. This was the onion. This is where I drew it. This was the bottle. This is where it ended up. So again, don't draw as if you're mimicking the underpainting in any way other than the same general objects. Okay, I don't want to get too long-winded here, but I wanted to, I'm going to do one clean edge. See, this is a little funky over here. It's a little disorganized. So I'm going to use this pale yellow type label color. See how I'm painting? I'm starting to paint the drawing, but I'm not paying attention to whatever's under there. That's irrelevant. And there's a little green edge. I might not want to introduce green because I don't have green anywhere else, but just that dot helps me know that that's the label. And by repeating it here, get a little bit of volume and repetition. See if there's somewhere else I can put green that would help. Maybe in, let's see, I'll just put it in here. So you can make little changes to your color. See, now it's more balanced. And later I might go like that with green or something at the end. Okay, this purple thing, there's nothing here. This is boring, boring, boring. So I'm going to do the drip down. I'll try to do the drip down without turning the camera off. This will look much better without all those pencil marks. But, see, I'll do one drip down. Okay, with drip down, you take plain water, so wash your water first. I'm going to do a drip down below this circle shape so that it has a little more presence because it's just hanging out down there. See how much water I put on there? Tons. And you only put water at the base of things. I'm also going to do it at the base of this tomato that's blue now and looks really cool. And now I'm making the picture bigger, even though I was going to crop it. It's looking better like this. So you can, and then I'm going to put it under here. So you got to have the water under, not to the sides, not above, under. The water will not leave you. Wherever you put it is where it ends. You have total control. Now when you're doing drip down, you want to reach for a warm hue, which is the top part of the wheel. And I'm going to do kind of a yellow-orange to help balance these. I don't want to get too rainbowish. In fact, I'm not thrilled with the green. I may do something with that. But put this in the water, and you can use a lot of pigment because you put water. if it's not still wet, which mine's drying fast. See, you put that, and then you put, well, I don't know if you can see that. So you put water there, and then you put the pigment right up to the edge like you did on the top, only it's dripping down. So you're saving all this white instead of covering it. I'm going to tape this to the wall so you can see what gravity does, because gravity is everything in watercolor. We use it strategically all the time. So I'm going to put this like this and show you. Whoops, I'll just prop it up. You can also do this on this, propping it up. All right, now I'm vertical. See my cutie dog over there. Hi, Ollie. Okay, all right. I'm gonna put tape so it doesn't fall over. Kind of is though. Let's use that. Okay. Now, the bigger the brush, the better for water. But see, check this out. If I drip down here, you want to bend the brush to get a lot of water. See, mine dried because I tried to do too many things. Then you go right to the edge. Hold your breath because you're going hard edge. And let it softly drip into the water. And it will drip all over the table too. So if you want to go outside, that's fine. But again, watercolor is never going to hurt you. Now, okay, so now here's something funny. It's all dry in here now. Water will not pass where you put it. So you're actually able to do a drip down without it overrunning your blue tomato. So I'm going to do just water up to here, because you generally don't paint above to do drip down, but I have to have a drip down for my, move this drip, see it's going to the side. And again, the drip is anywhere that it's shiny. And you can always see where it's wet, especially if you turn the paper sideways. Now I'm saying like you don't ever want to drip above, but I need to have a drip below of warm paint for this to go. Now this is dripping, I don't care. I think that's kind of fun. I'm going to put under here, and it's going to drip, and it's going to avoid the blue round thing and keep going. So I'm going to get a drip not only like I did on the blue, but also on the onion. Now you'd want to lean it on the ground for this, but after a while you get comfortable enough that I can just put the water around this. Then you grab your smaller one, and again, your drip, and you put it here, and you watch what it does. I'm getting the same effect as I did on the one below it. And you don't want to outline, you don't want to keep going. It's subtle, you know, it's subtle, and I might not even go all the way there. But let's see if it'll move enough to show you what it's doing. Okay, watch. See it go around? See how that goes? So there it moves on the right. So cool. Now look how beautiful that drip down is. Look how this is coming together. This side, not so good. But in here, and sometimes we crop, like right like this, crop like a square. That might be beautiful. And I might not want to do a drip down. Well, guess what? Look how cool this is now. I would never mess with that. Now, this blue thing's dry, so that gives you the option, if you want, of doing drip down from up here to show that this is the tabletop. And again, lots of water, but control it when you get around things so that you don't have, I'm not dripping here, but on the side just so you can see with the water. There, that's all I'm doing, I don't want to lose that. And then I'm going to do here, as you know, the water goes around. Hopefully it's wet enough to get in there now. Now I can do this because the top is dry. If I tried to do this when the top was wet, check that out. Is that not the coolest? I mean, come on. It's the best medium there is. Well, I wouldn't say best, but for what it does, the delicacy of it, an interesting, look at that. Look at that. Every square inch should be interesting. That's the goal. And you can use this drip down method in any project. It's beautiful. Cool in the back, warm in the front. Background either even wash, flared out, as long as it's right to the edge. All right, I think I've talked long enough, but I wanted to redo that. And then if I were to redo this tomorrow, let's show you what's starting to happen here. Look at that. Look at this. Look at that. It's like you're taking a journey. It's mysterious. It's just, it's a thing. It's a cool thing.